if the least of us benefits, everyone benefits.
It is worth the effort to bring to the table the voices of those who are traditionally disenfranchised.
Representation is really key.
We need passion, we need vision.
We always have more in common than we have difference, always. Democracy to me means equality for everybody and that everybody is treated the same. And it's different, with, accessibility, diversity, all of that stuff. To me, democracy is that everybody is allowed to have a voice, everybody is allowed to have their opinions, no matter who you are, what color your skin is, what ability you have, it doesn't matter.
We have a long history in this country around democracy. We've established ideals and we have formative documents that talk about democracy as the cornerstone for our society. And some of the provisions of those documents include the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness for everyone, right to assembly, right to personal property, right to have a voice, even with elected representatives. The right to be a part of the decisions that are being made on your behalf.
The ability to exercise free will. Exercising free will really leads to personal governance. And I think that that's so critical for any of us to, number one, understand what that means, and number two, understand that we have that capacity. Becoming more and more willing to stop and say to myself, what's really the right thing to do here? And what is the best for everyone involved?
Democracy to me means how media relates to a local community. Being a former publisher, we have this naivete that the media is the savior of democracy. But what you see is that as a community falls apart and struggles to grow, one of the first hits in a community is the media. So who's telling the stories of the underserved, of the people that don't have their story told? Who's watching the people that are there to protect us and to make decisions on behalf of the community?
If we talk about democracy and what it means to me democracy would mean having a more equitable civic engagement process so everybody can be included and people of color can have their voices heard in those spaces. I believe that if you are living in this country and you are contributing economically, you should be allowed to have a say in who represents you.
Democracy, to me, is the best way of decision making that a community can take. One vote per person, and having that collectively come together to make informed decisions as a community.
I think democracy is not as complicated as we make it. When money comes into play, that's when things start to get complicated and muddled. Is it about public service from our elected officials, or is it about their career track? I feel like right now, our democracy is in crisis, and we are on the precipice of unprecedented civil unrest. And there are folks that are really agitating that, pushing the buttons, and calling for that.
My name is Penn Street, and we are at the YMCA of the Rockies in Estes Park, Colorado. I think a lot of times when people see me, they instantly think, oh, she's visually impaired. And for instance, if I'm using a white cane and I'm walking down a street, people literally will grab their small, it's like the Bride of Frankenstein coming. And I know they're doing it because they don't want to get in my way. They feel like they need to clear the path. But it actually comes across to me as they're afraid of me, or where if I have a guide dog and I'm walking down the street, it's the opposite. I hear oh, what a beautiful dog. Oh, that's amazing. And it's a positive thing. So even something as simple as a white cane versus a guide dog, even though I'm me and I'm choosing these two different tools of how to get around, even though I'm the same person, just that tool that I'm holding in my hand creates a different reaction. And so I always try to get, and I can't judge you by your cover, right? I can't see you. So I go off of things like, what is your voice? What are the words you're using? What is the tone you're using? And I can also, I know it sounds kind of weird, but I can, if somebody comes up to me and they're really aggressive and intense, I can feel that. And sometimes they don't even have to say anything. But I don't have that option of looking at somebody and saying, oh, this is how I'm going to box them in, because I can't see them. And so I actually automatically have to get more intimate with somebody before I can judge them, right? Well, I wish everybody did that. Take away your eyes and judge somebody by what they're saying, how they're saying it, and get to know them. And that, I feel like people would come together a lot more, if they didn't judge that instant, visual thing.
I am Jim Jackson, and I live in Fruita, Colorado. I'm a retired National Park Service law enforcement officer. Spent 25 years in law enforcement in St. Louis, Missouri, at the Gateway Arch. Worked my way up through the ranks. Field ranger, and retired as the chief ranger of a pretty significant law enforcement operation. I think people opposite my political beliefs get a lot wrong about myself and others. But that's both ends of this spectrum. Some people can put themselves at a point on the spectrum. Some people, like myself, I think I slide along the spectrum. If you ask me about my Second Amendment beliefs, very strong beliefs, all the way out there, on the right. When I say I vote the Second Amendment, and people hear me say that, I think they put me in the gun nut, far right, against same-sex marriage, against immigration, and I'm not that at all. I'm very much for equal rights. I very much support the LGBTQ+ community. I'm very pro-immigration.
So my name is Perla Rodriguez. I'm a community organizer for Center for Health Progress here in Fort Morgan, Colorado. I've been working with Center for Health Progress as a community organizer for about 3 years now. I am a first-generation daughter of an immigrant man and an American-born woman. I grew up in Fort Morgan, but was born in Greeley. I have actually lived in Fort Morgan since I was about 1.5 years. A lot of people might think that my way of viewing things is very leftist, or that I don't believe that there should be laws or policies embedded in our, in our systems or countries. I actually don't believe that. I definitely do believe in laws and policies. I just recognize that a lot of the laws and policies that we have are, very racist. A lot of Americans don't like to be reminded that our country was built off of, the backs of BIPOC folks. But the truth is, it's important to remember, and it's important to recognize it, because history has a tendency of repeating itself. And if we don't recognize and if we don't acknowledge that this was a part of our history, a very sad part of our history, it can repeat itself. And our country will never be able to move on and be more united, right? It'll continue to divide itself if we continue to see things that way.
My career in the greater Colorado Springs area has been really centered around the idea of democracy. First around elevating the voices of disenfranchised populations at Citizens Project, and most recently for the last 5 years I've worked at Westside Cares, which is an organization that serves people experiencing homelessness and poverty, who are arguably the most disenfranchised population in our country. There are so many things that people don't know or understand about people experiencing poverty or the institution of poverty itself. My experience has been that people experiencing poverty and homelessness are the most generous, kind, talented, thoughtful people. And so many of them came from circumstances just like you or me and had one significant life-altering event that just created this downward spiral out of which it's impossible to reach up. So we're standing at one of our community parks, and I want to tell people who might not know, individuals sleep here, people live here, whether you like it or not, whether you see it or not, and those people need to be involved in the decisions about how we embrace the most vulnerable members of our community. There are policies that affect them, and those policies affect us. They affect the visibility of homelessness, they affect the cost to taxpayers, and engaging people experiencing poverty at the table is a really worthwhile endeavor. You know, what's great about empathy is that we all have it. And whether or not it is activated in each one of us is a direct result of whether or not we have a connection, an immediate and meaningful connection to the person who is being excluded. And so for folks who are interested in elevating voices of people experiencing poverty, next time you're at the grocery store, say hello to someone who's clearly struggling. If you have a hard time understanding the plight of people living with disability or mental health challenges, consider asking someone in your life, what kind of accommodation would help bring you more fully to the table? I don't think that we have an empathy gap. I think that we don't know what to do with our empathy, and the best way to figure out what to do with our empathy is to ask the person who is being affected.
I'm Jeff Campbell. We're inside the Truth Media Studios, and I'm a guerrilla storyteller. The creative director and founder of Emancipation Theater Company. Some of the things that people get wrong about me is that I am this radical, angry person who's only obsessed with race and racism or bias and things like that. I'm not. I believe first and foremost that my personal life choices are the number one factor in the quality of life that I experience. And I also believe that there are structures, institutions, and systems within our society that were built on bias. What is going on? I believe in pushing buttons. I believe in amplifying the radical position, the radical voice, but I'm a rational human being. Agitating dialogue by really amplifying a radical position is a great way to begin to start to see people's perspective. I'm not anti-government and I'm not anti-American. I simply believe that people of color, women, immigrants, people that are of different abilities, and people from the LGBTQ community have to pay a higher price for freedom. I believe in standing up for those folks. It doesn't mean that I want to invalidate anyone else or to call anyone, demonize an entire group of people. We have lost the ability to affirm one another's humanity if that person is of opposing views as we are. So when we no longer affirm, we invalidate. And then when we only affirm, then we enable. And so it is okay and absolutely necessary that we both affirm and challenge one another when we're having political and social discourse. So it's absolutely okay to challenge, but if you do that without first affirming the person across the aisle from you, then you're just going to dismiss them, they're going to dismiss you, and nothing will get done.
My first name is Ruby, my last name is Lopez. I am the Cutie POC, and that's an acronym for Korean Trans People of Color Program Coordinator and the Spanish Access Coordinator. As someone that's pretty far left-leaning, I think that other folks that have different political beliefs sometimes think of us as maybe, like, I want to say like lazy. I think really it's not lazy. Like, I think a lot of folks that are millennials or younger generations are just kind of, I guess, more of like a skeptical political culture. And I think there's a certain understanding that the game is kind of rigged. There's so much money and like power and influence that can like sway decision making in this country. And I think that a lot of folks of my generation that do lean left are just kind of like when you play a game and you know that the game is already rigged. What choices are you left with other than just walking away from the game? A lot of us are just tired of settling and compromising for less than what any human being should be afforded.
My name is Mary McGuire, and I live in Fruita, Colorado. I personally believe that it's human nature to want to find a compromise that allows for a way forward. I really don't believe that it's human nature for us to be as combative and as divided as we are right now. It's really, it's creating an illness in our country. And the illness is getting worse, like exponentially. And I think that people want to be well. So I think they want to come back together to the degree that we can work in and around and with each other. I think that sometimes people think, that have opposite political views, and I think that I want to give away like any and all of the resources that the United States government has to offer to anybody for any reason. And that's not true. I don't feel that way, and I wouldn't do that, and I think there need to be checks and balances, and I think that what we have needs to be used judiciously, but not selfishly.
We are a community that gets made fun of by the rest of the state. We are memeified, we are thought of as violent, and the only reason why we are thought of that way, because Pueblo is a former, they think of us as a dirty still town. They don't think of us as, we were the city that built the West. We were a multicultural city that built the West, and everything from still in the Brooklyn Bridge to the Space Needle, that was done right behind me. And so what we've lost is that little bit of Pueblo pride to go, no, Denver, no to the rest of the West, you aren't going to make fun of us. And we need a leader that will do that. Unfortunately, I think that we have such a chip on our shoulder that people are afraid to be proud of Pueblo. We'll put the slogan on a refrigerator, but we won't fight back when people put us down. I'm John Rodriguez, and I'm in Pueblo. I think we are ignored. We were once the Chicago of Colorado politics, Colorado's second city. And now that we have lost that power and that stature, we are a second or third rate political city. It's struggling to move past this idea that we were only a manufacturing town, where a high school education and a job at the mill was really the epitome of American life and the American dream. And now we have 1 in 3 students in District 60 are under poverty, living in poverty. You have about 40% of the people are on Medicaid in the county. And so what we are is we are a former still town trying to find ourselves again in a modern world.
My community needs more representation. I've lived in this community for well over 28 plus years. And there has never been anybody in any position of power that looks like me or speaks the same languages as me. We need to have more people in city council or school boards that look like the very people that make up Fort Morgan. Fort Morgan is probably one of the most diverse communities in all of Colorado, and the fact that there are 0 people of color representing it is really sad. For me and my community, I think it's important that our voices are heard. It's important that we're represented, and it's important that little kids can see people that look like them and that speak like them, representing them and wanting to make changes that are going to be more inclusive for people in the community and the culture that they belong to.
I think what my community, and I guess when I say my community, I'm thinking of the cutie pot community, the queer and trans people of color community. I think what we need, at least in the immediate, is more representation in government and from our leaders. That would be a good start. What my community, being a small community, needs is just a little bit of protection and visibility and awareness, and like honoring the fact that yes, we are a small part of the population, and despite that, we still deserve to have rights and be protected. I don't think that protection is equal to special treatment.
My community needs from our government, they need stronger accessibility. We need accessible transportation. We need jobs. People who are blind and visually impaired, we are the highest. It used to be between 70 to 80% either unemployed or underemployed. But yet, if you look at us as a group, we are the highest educated group in the United States of America. But people will hire somebody who's deaf or somebody who's in a wheelchair or any other disability over somebody who's blind or visually impaired. We are the absolute last one to get hired. No matter our background, no matter our schooling, it doesn't matter. So we need jobs, and we need that barrier to be taken away, because a lot of businesses don't want to hire. The number one reason is they think it's going to be expensive, because they think they're going to have to pay for all this technology and this equipment to make our job accessible. But that's not entirely true. There are ways to get around that if you're a small company, or if you're a corporation. To hire somebody like me is actually less expensive than to hire somebody else. But you're not going to know that until you actually talk to me. And also, I want government to put us, when they start making decisions about people with disabilities, we should be at the table. You know, stop making decisions for us. Ask us what we need and how we need it, because it happens over and over again. They create these programs, or they create, you know, even bus routes. They don't ask the people who are actually using the bus routes where they need the buses to go.
Obviously, one of the communities that I'm a member of is I'm a woman, and I very frequently feel that the government is simply not doing enough to allow American women and, you know, girls to move fully into their own power as human individuals. I still feel like there's just so much downward pressure on women, and I feel like our government needs to do a hell of a lot better in terms of elevating women and girls to allow them to, you know, really flourish and become part of the rulemaking bodies.
The number one thing that community needs from government, in my opinion, is empathy. Empathy is what we need in order to see ourselves in others. To have real empathy means to not say, oh, all police are great, they love everybody, they treat everyone equal, nothing to see here, which sounds like nothing but gaslighting. The internal investigations, oh yeah, we looked at it and we didn't do anything wrong. So when can we get to a place where we're really doing some real work and really opening up what we're doing? Then we can start looking at creative and reimagining ways that we can approach some of the issues that we have. I don't hate all police officers, and yes, I do believe some police officers are there for all of the right reasons, but you have a system that protects those who are not. Until we're ready to have real dialogue and be willing to be held accountable, then this will continue, and eventually a house built on an uneven foundation will fall apart. What happens often is that we're looking at statistics, we're looking at charts, we're looking at graphs. Now, statistics, graphs, and charts will tell you who, will tell you where, and it'll tell you what. But what it does not tell you is the why and the how. And that's the power of storytelling. When we sit down and listen to people and begin to see ourselves within one another, that's when we begin to understand the why and the how And those are the places where we can change.
We recognize that engaging in democracy is not convenient. It is messy, it's nonlinear, and sometimes it requires a lot of extra effort. One of the things that we can all agree on is we want for people to have the opportunity to access resources to live their version of their most fulfilled lives. One of the emerging common ground areas that I see is that people foundationally care. They care about other human beings. And sometimes our hearts are so big that we can't look at the things that are difficult to see. But I just want to invite everyone into looking at the things that are difficult to see, because it's only when we're in honesty about the way it hurts our hearts that we can move forward.